Hello and welcome, and this video will be a Litecoin video looking at Litecoin against Bitcoin, briefly against Ethereum, as well against the US dollar. And I've been making a spreadsheet. Anyone watching my video is familiar with this. For those whom are not, what I do is I track some random, most not that random, different cryptocurrencies against Litecoin, and I have its price in that against Litecoin for each one of these codes, and some other statistics as well. Some of my last trades, I bought Cloak back as I ended up selling that for a profit and then buying back at a decent return. Price now is at 5,000. I bought Core at 2,300. It's down to 2048, but I sold twice, so I'll be looking to buy again if it goes lower. I sold NXC at 1477. It's at 948, meaning it's very close for a buyback, but I went a little bit lower. Same thing with NXS, which was a sell at 1984. I'm looking to buy it back a little bit cheaper on the 1380 number. And then Solus selling at 53.56, nowhere near a buyback as it's just a bit lower than where it stands. There's no real numbers in here indicating there's great buys or sells. Throughout the day, almost every coin overperformed Litecoin today, other than NXS. Komodo pretty much did the same thing, and Core losing 5% against it. But over the last 10 days, almost everything has underperformed Litecoin, and noticeably in double digits, between 11 and 30% for these codes, with the exception of SLS, which has well overperformed it, and Voxels, which will be a new name change soon. I did a video on that earlier today. It has pretty much done the same as Litecoin over the last 10 days. When we look at Litecoin against Bitcoin, there was this magnificent move that occurred in December. And since that point, how is it going to handle any large move, either to the upside or downside? In this case, it held on to its upper price by ranging between the 14 handle and the, well, we'll say 19, close to 19.7-ish. And then after that, it had a relatively small gain, barely breaking resistance. But thus far, it has had its support in at about 181, which was a level where it consolidated its first gain in February from. It's the exact same area in which it resisted the market in January. From January from January 2nd through January 14th. So very, very interesting area. I talk about gap fill at times when you have a big up or down move. That means this entire blank space from 005 to most of it to single 014. A lot of it hasn't been filled, and that's another way of stating that if it does go down there, then there's going to be a significant or a higher low from this point. Right now, the tentative higher low is set in at within the Poloniex exchange 0.0138 or 13287. That's the tentative one. It hasn't had a significant break higher yet to establish the fact that, well, if it rolls over, maybe it comes down to 0.108 or whatever number lower than this, that's significantly higher than this one. Well, that would be what the higher low would be from this break, and of course that would be a significant one if it eventually eventually breaks out of this resistance and makes nice gains. Let's put some lines in, change this up to the Bittrex exchange. Okay. So therefore, what we're seeing in here is the support level at 195. It got up to it. It's resisted it, supported it, all that kind of stuff right now. So it's in that area of its test. It's testing it within the 18 average. It's sideways. So now it's waiting to see where the battlegrounds is going to be won, either for the bears or the bulls. If it's a battleground one with the bulls, it's got to get above the 18 average of highs and the resistance it has above that at around the 206 handle. And you would expect it obviously to break this resistance, but test close to or at anywhere at least at around 220. As would be a significant leg higher than here. And then from the bear win, which is the exact same polar opposite. Here's the 18 average of lows right now at basically 1 on all 8s after that. If it has problems within that, just like this resistance area is 2069, this support area is in at around 183, 181 even. And breaking below that, I have a line in at 1673, but that's not where I'll be buying at. I'll be buying at 163-ish or so, right down towards here. The Fibonacci downside from this level here actually comes in at about 163. And there's another Fibonacci number that I've seen with the exact same move in the area as well. So I'd be looking at around 161 to 162 if there's ever going to be a break of this support. If we switch this up to Litecoin against Ethereum, it's not having much volatility, but what I do see it doing is after these 3 green candles up, it has now on basically 5 days of just riding this 18 average of highs. It's had 2 down days in a row, albeit with all these days, at least the last 4, on microscopic volatility. And so it's just hanging in there at a key resistance level. That's all fine and dandy. At some point, it's going to be making some sort of move. But breaking above this resistance, I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing similarities to these types of green candle moves that would get to and probably pierce above the 1/3 price of the Bitcoin. So let's now switch this up to the US dollar. And big support at 171.5. And it's been doing such now since Crypto Day on March the 7th. And what I'm looking at for this chart here is a lot of support. It's not a guarantee that it's going to break below, but I do see it riding the 18 average of lows for several periods. I do see the session on the 13th having a high at the 18 average of lows, where the previous 3 were a noticeable amount above such, closer to the 18 closes, but that's a weak sign. And I also realize that just because it looks like a weak setup, that doesn't mean it's going to go down or go down much. It could very easily maybe just come down to this 160 handle and then rise back higher. Of course, it could end up going lower, and I'll talk a little bit about that throughout. But on any bullish case, whenever you have the 18 average declining, it's always got to manage to work its way above the 18 average of highs to establish a breakout, sort of like in here on February the 14th. And then breaking above here, well, we got upside targets. I'm going to show downside targets as well as I now scroll this. So I have upside targets at 276 and the previous high at 370. We'll talk about higher levels after that later on. And they've also been talked about in previous videos. I have 2 lines represented here. 93, 96, 67, 85. May I also point out, though, there'd be support at around 110 to 112, which is the twice hit previous low. And even up to maybe like, there could be a lot of like higher low, 61.8% from here to here. You're looking at somewhere around 135 as well. So there's many layers to get to this point. The 67 is Fibonacci downside. I'm looking for a downtrend, which occurs from December 19th through February the 6th. I'm looking for a noticeable lower high price correction, which is here. So based on this high and this low, I got a down target at about 67 and change. The formula for such is high, and in this case 221, divided by low, 106.5 about, to the exponent of negative 0.618, and then multiply the low again at 106.5, and that's what you'll get, 67. The 93 handle is a very, very, very long-term number. Let's bring up why it's in there. Going back to these lows at about $1, it represents I think it's a 23.6% down correction. Now, very often you can look at it and maybe you would say, hey, maybe it'll go down below there, pierce a bit below, and then settle in here for maybe a couple days, and if it's successful support, lift off thereafter. And if the price goes there, that wouldn't surprise me. As I'm looking at this time frame, the weekly chart, before this big move occurred, this is what the market looked like. Oh, it's been just going sideways. There's no indication of this breaking out anytime soon. You usually have enough time to decide on any bullish or bearish scenarios, but oh, were you ready for that? That's what this crypto game offers. Here's a spot where just out of nowhere it goes from like $4 up to about 37. I was watching this like, oh my goodness, I barely had any. Barely had any at all. And it was, at that point, Coinbase added it to its exchange, and it just had a phenomenal move. This level of 23.6, oftentimes when you take big low versus big high, which is exactly what I'm doing here, you will notice that these levels come up to key areas. So the 23.6 coming down to the $90 and change level is just pennies off, 93.716. So that's a difference of 25 cents under this number. Technical analysis tells me that when the price breaks this point, all of these fib numbers are going to start to rise as price goes higher. When this number, as price goes higher, rises up to about 370, that's when I would be talking about a possible market top, when we have phenomenally higher prices within this market, of course. Now, the 38.2% down correction, I'll put that line in as well. That comes in at $40.19. This high worked out to be $39.11. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty darn near close to at the signal, somewhat of a significant area. Usually, oftentimes it does, but I mean, right at say 1363, not really. So therefore, what I can do on a mathematical level is two things I'm going to calculate. One, Fibonacci upside based on this move from here to here. What I'm looking for is the uptrend, and going from $1 to 300 and change is most certainly a monstrous uptrend of over, well, about 370x. And I'm looking for a good down price correction, which we haven't had yet. So therefore, what I need to do is either calculate what the Fibonacci, and this is what makes it very difficult. I either have to use this high, so based on a move from up to this, let's say this high in here, because what would it go up to? It would be most certainly higher than here. So it does make it very difficult to do any type of Fibonacci upside. However, I'm not exactly quite sure the mathematical formula that I would use to do this, but I can very much easily do this via trial and error, which is what I'm going to do. And that is, I'll be looking for this line to, actually the 23 points, this line to come up here. What price point would it take to the upside for that to be the case? And I'm going to calculate that now. And I've come across around 2,000, basically all twos, $2,222 area of such. If the price goes there, then this line would then be at around 370. I think I have upside targets written in here. I just want to see what I have. I have some short-term numbers, but just for fun, so I don't forget it, and I don't, that happens to be where another line was. That is just terrible. Okay, which one? I mean, when I place this ray in, I wish it would... What number did I have in originally? It was 67, yeah. That is just awful. It's fixed now, but... So we'll just see if later on in time, if $2,220-ish happens to work out to any sort of major big key level for its time where you may establish some sort of big level of resistance, or if it goes up fast to this level and it just doesn't stop going, that it would actually reach what its next up target would be on a failure of finding resistance where you're supposed to, which is what I've always noticed with these Fibonacci levels. If you go to a key level where you're supposed to stop going up or down and you don't, well then whatever the next points or point at least you're supposed to go to is usually tested and reached very quickly. Okay, thank you for tuning in. Happy Crypto Day. Thank you for watching. I said that twice. Bye-bye.